Hello, welcome to the Myth-Busting Neurodiverse Relationships podcast. I'm Natalie Roberts and I'm here with my co-host, Heather Parks. We've both been in our neurodiverse relationships and families for more than 25 years. We met 10 years ago when we were feeling really desperate and trying to solve a lot of issues in our relationship and our families. We've been journeying since then. We've found many more positive and hopeful ways to solve, resolve, repair, reconnect in those relationships and in our families, in our lives. And we now co-host also Loving Difference online, giving hope and a way forward for neurodiverse relationships. In this podcast, though, we're busting the myths about neurodiverse relationships, which we had when we started this journey, that we've realised aren't true, and that actually were preventing us from recovering and having the relationships with our partners and children that we wanted. So we want to dispel these myths and bring you hope that absolutely things can change. So whether you're out and about or comfy with a cuppa, let's dive into our next conversation. See you there. Welcome to another episode of Loving Difference TV with me, Natalie Roberts, and Heather Parks.
Hello.
So this morning I was just doing a bit of exercise and a little idea for a conversation popped into my head around resilience. So I've messaged Heather and we thought we'd just get on. I don't know what we're going to say. We haven't planned anything, but I just thought it'd be a good, interesting topic to have a chat with you about, Heather, and what perspectives you have on it, and we'll see where we go.
It's a great topic, and my dog's about to bark.
Okay, Maisie's going to be part of the episode, I feel.
Okay.
Maisie.
Typical, that is, isn't it? Typical. She hasn't finished either. There's a cat.
Okay, she has given us the clues before.
Resilience. Yeah, it's something that comes up a lot. So it's a word that's bounded around, so that the family they just need to be more resilient, or education healthcare plans for children who need special education or extra needs. We're just going to make them more resilient, and I think it's
a big word, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Because it's easy to say, isn't it?
I think I've always wondered, what is it exactly, or thought, I don't think I'm very resilient. What exactly is that? And I think this year, this sort of 2020 year, that word resilience, I feel like it has been bandied around even more. Like, the economy needs to be resilient. We need to all be resilient. We are resilient. We're going to bounce back. And this kind of language, and I don't know, personally, for me, that language I haven't found that particularly helpful in terms of thinking I'm supposed to get somewhere, or there's I shouldn't be a feeling like this, or it's just really, I don't know, it's quite a triggering sort of I don't know if it's a particularly helpful term when you're struggling.
I think it carries some kind of judgment or evaluation, or it feels like it does, as if it's something that some people are good at, as if that they've created that, as opposed to other people. Whereas actually I always think of it as really wrapped up in trauma and past experience, and the narrowing of your sort of window tolerance, like how much capacity you actually have to deal with this stuff. And that of course like is massively influenced by past experience and all the pressures and stresses that are pushing and pulling, and sort of making that capacity go down. And I think then it's a bit like rewarding a child for being a good speller when they're just good at spelling, isn't it? And they don't have a problem with spelling, as opposed to a child who's actually really working hard, incredibly hard, and still only gets 3 out of 10 or something.
That's true. It is something that there is some sense or judgment about what is resilient and what isn't. I think I was also thinking about it this morning about, I think I've always sort of thought I'm not resilient. I don't know why, but I think that's just the judgment I've made about myself. But then I was thinking, there's also something wrapped up in resilience, I think, in not necessarily a very healthy way, similar to what you were saying about more trauma or past stuff, about that you keep going, that you don't give up, that you, in spite of everything, you're still keeping going, keeping going, keeping going, like that kind of keep going thing.
Yeah, and
And I
that's
can
rewarded. You get
yeah, and
like
that
praise
that is
for that.
that's
Like,
the
oh, I don't know how
rewarded
you do
thing.
it. You're amazing. You get all of
Yeah, you're
that.
so
Thinking,
strong.
yeah.
These
And
kinds of
actually, you're
things.
thinking, well, I don't actually want this at all. What I really want is some help, and
Well,
I
there
don't.
isn't another way. Again, you
There
sort
isn't
of
another
think, well, the
way.
only way is to keep going, surely. And I was thinking back to, I think I went to an event once, and somebody was talking specifically about our relationships, and I guess that there was a sort of, I think that one of the questions was asked, well, why are we still here? Like, if it's this difficult and we're feeling hopeless about it, and I mean, it was people that were feeling really stuck with it all.
Mm.
Um, why are we still in it? And I think the idea of resilience was sort of part of the answer. And they were sort of, I can remember them saying, well, you know, after 5 years, it was quite difficult, but we kept going. We loved more, and we'll try something else and go again. And then you get to, you know, certainly for me, another 5 years, and then you say, oh, well, keep going, and we try something else, and you kind of go around these cycles, but you still keep going. And I think for us, it was like, I can look back and see sort of 5-year points. And the thing that somebody said was, there's something about us that we keep going where other people would have either questioned or would have said, no, not for me, and would have stopped or would have made a different choice. I just thought, was that resilient? Like, that to me felt like, is that a good thing? Like, resilience. We kept going and just, yeah, just kind of love more, love better, like lose more of me. Which is kind of what happened. Is that resilience? Because I was thinking this morning, that doesn't feel like very healthy resilience. It feels like more stress fueled, stressy resilience, which feels more like what you were just describing. You know, that keep going, I can't give up, this will all happen, this will all fall apart if I don't, I just have to push through. Does that kind of ring bells for you? That kind of,
Yeah, I do think
there
it's
wasn't
so.
like another choice.
Yeah, it's like, oh, so often that there's children involved,
Yeah.
and just, you know, yeah, perhaps other people see choices where
Hmm.
we see, you know, being stuck isn't a good or healthy place to make it. You know, it's not like we made a different choice. I don't think. Perhaps we just saw that there wasn't one. Or
Yeah, or it felt like there wasn't one. Or maybe again, our patterns or some of the stuff that we are not aware of in ourselves can mean where other people might have said, that's not okay with me, or I'm not doing that, or that's not working for me, and go. We were like, oh, we'll figure it out. I'll fix it. I'll find a way. We'll keep going.
yeah,
It was a bit of that.
something about yeah, just that belief that somehow we can make things better. Whereas,
Yeah. I used to think that was like an eternal optimism kind of thing, but I know that there was also some quite unhealthy stuff in it about my responsibility, like feeling there's a responsibility to sort it out, or that we, you know, I think there for me now feels like there was some quite unhealthy things in some of that as well. Not
yeah,
wanting
some
it to
quite
lose it or.
yeah, choices where you felt that you just had so many concern, you know, it would just open up too big a hole that you just didn't want to
Yeah.
go down that.
And I guess
But I
it could
think
even be in a relationship.
in the
Well,
family,
depending on your beliefs about ending relationships, or again the judgments you might make about that, and that, well, we can't do that. We're married. You keep going. You know, just push through. Find another way. It'll be better next year. I remember some of the things were like, well, when this is done, when this has happened, then I think there'll be time, or something else will happen. So you just kind of keep hanging on the next thing, as it were. And I think there is a sense of resilience in that, but I just don't know if it's that. What's going on with our nervous systems, do you think, from your perspective, in that kind of resilience and that sort of just, I have to keep going, I can't stop, or
Well, I think you're in a defensive state, aren't you? I do really do. So you're talking about having your defenses on for a really long time, which means
Yeah.
you either got your sympathetic, nervous system going, and you've got a lot of fight flight energy, and perhaps that gives you the energy to do the do. And often that cycles with a kind of shutdown where you sort of like go into that dorsal vagal, and you've lost all kind of, you're almost in a it's not a complete freeze where you have passed out, because that would literally be the equivalent of an animal going into that play dead mode. But it's kind of like a functional freeze. You're sort of still going through your day-to-day activities, but I think that sort of can be mistaken for resilience, because actually what that is just pure survival, like just and you're not even really thinking about anything else,
it's kind of numbed, isn't it?
just trying to get through the day.
Yeah.
So even having the energy to have those thought processes where you might even make not even in a state to make a decision. So no, I would say that that's not resilience. I think that is a defensive strategy. And
that does feel like the thing that's rewarded in a way. There's a sense in which it is that you're a survivor, and you're surviving, and you are still showing up, I think, isn't it? Or even if it's in quite a numbed place, in a lot of ways, my experience has been that even in that, people are functioning, they're still showing up, they're still working, they're still feeding their kids, they're still getting to school, doing the things. But actually, you're right, I think it's very indicative of a survival stress mode
it's very costly in the long term. It's really costly for your whole energy bank, because you're like borrowing, aren't you? You're in red all the time. And our defenses, they weren't designed to keep us in there for a long time. This was a quick let's run away from the tiger and or play dead, whichever we wanted to do, before we could hop up and run away again. But then we'd go back to our little herd or whatever, and everything would be all right, shake it off, and get back to normal again. Whereas unfortunately our lives now tend to be that we live in these really high stress situations. And if you're also living in relationship or in households where there are communication difficulties, like even children who are under a lot of stress and therefore behaving in such ways that it's creating a lot more stress, we get a lot of families that I work with children with extra needs, or just with sensitive nervous systems, who are really struggling with the overwhelm, and they're always crying out for help. They're not sitting there going, I'm incredibly resilient, I'm so strong. They are wanting help, but there just isn't really anything out there for them. So they haven't got any choice but to be resilient, because what are they supposed to do? Just decide to go to bed for 6 months while their children, there's no other choice.
I think it's the cost, isn't it? I think that's what from what we're saying here is, it's just there is a huge cost to that isn't really seen, but I think does come out in our mental well-being, our emotional health, our emotional resourcing, usually all used up and burnt out. Our physical health ultimately as well, it gets impacted and massively affected potentially, because we are in that stress state all the time. And that is, I think culturally there is some reward to that. There's no point at which you can hop off even for a minute and kind of recover yourself or get some resources in to go again. It's just ongoing depletion, isn't it?
Relentless depletion. That's exactly, it's a good word, depletion.
It's not really resilient, is it?
No, and I don't think that is the same as resilience. And absolutely, like you say, you get a lot of reward for it, in terms of praise and stuff. But it's, I think it goes back to my view that, and this is where I get quite concerned about the self-care. Now, we're really into self-care in Love and Difference, aren't we? So I'm not knocking it, but then it's like you get the person that we're talking about and the situation they're in, and they're in this defensive state, and they're depleted and they're exhausted, and then we turn around and say, well, we just need a bubble bath and then you'll be all right. It's not, that is, and self-care doesn't mean it's that person who's in crisis mode. Crises? Crises. What's the
Crisis.
plural of
It's
that?
crisis.
Anyway,
What, when you've got more than one crisis in your mode?
that's not the responsibility, or in my view, it shouldn't be the responsibility of that person. That's where we need community. That's where we need other people coming in and actually taking the kids off for a bit, and they need rest at that point. A bubble bath isn't going to do it. It might make them feel better for a tiny second, but we know from the we talk about the bucket, don't we? And those little nice little things they made. But if you've got
It's like putting a tiny bit of shingle in a lake. It's not going to make
a bucket with a million holes in it, that little bit of top up is not going to make any difference. So you never end up coming back into this what we sort of window of tolerance, which is where you can keep within your kind of your ability to learn and be open and curious, and in that state that's the state where there's resilience. It's the wider that window, the more resilience you have, the more capacity you have, the more interest you have in the outside world. And but so I think once you've fallen outside of that, these little niceties, actually what people need is really good practical support at that point.
And also I think it's why in Loving Difference we work a lot, as well as what needs to be going in that bucket and potentially how much or how depleted, just knowing and having an awareness of how depleted it's become, and that in a sense healthy resilience is quite tough from that point. That actually we focus also on the drains, on the holes in the bucket, rather than just there's a cup you got to fill, there's a bucket you got to fill. Do more self-care, like look after yourself, when we're not aware of where the energy is going, and that actually there are things we can do around that, that mean that at least then for what you are doing, you keep the energy and you're more in control of where that's going.
Yeah, definitely. And I it's always like just a silly thing that I say, but I really did mean it. I was wasting so much energy by being in this high stressed out state all the time, even to the point where I was showering in a stressed state, because my mind was already running through my to-do list. I was rushing, like there was so much tension in my body. It's all this stress that we hold, which is costing our energy. And, instead of just getting on with the normal homeostasis and digestion and all the other heart rate regulation, all the things that our autonomic nervous system could be doing if we weren't using it in a defensive state, instead it hasn't got. So none of those other functions are going on because it's thinking we've got to run away from the tiger any minute, and that's how we act in life. And I come across I see it all the time, when I come across new clients, they're just so exhausted and worn out, and the systems are such hard battles. And
some of the first steps are I think towards healthy resilience is creating that capacity, isn't it? That's almost the work of not bounce back, be able to keep doing more, that's the reward, or that's the thing we're going to keep doing. It's how you create capacity in your system, so that just so you have more resources emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, to be able to so you have more to use.
It's working with families and clients so that they can actually widen that window, and they need to do that kind of very gentle titration of, yes, okay, something's a little bit stressful, but we're going to come back down and then we're going to recover. And they need that recovery time before the next crisis hits. Otherwise, they never resolve it, and it just gets trapped in the body. And we end up, that in that just getting lower and lower and lower in our energy bank resources. And I love I love the doing less, and the whole focus we have on pace and slowing down, because those are things that everybody can actually do. So a lot of the families that I work with, they genuinely do not have time to go and have a nice bubble bath. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So to say that would just be ridiculous anyway. But perhaps as they're washing up, they could just take notice of how tight their shoulders are and just take a deep breath.
I just
And
did it
then
then, actually, just because you was just you doing that made me go.
and it's just even, even if we just slow down our speech,
For a
and
minute.
because you're automatically sort of using more out breath then, I don't know, just sing in your car, humming, all these things that kind of encourage you to breathe out if you're in that sympathetic state, a really high stress state. Or if you find you really just down in that really dorsal shutdown, no energy, everything, that's just finding something that's actually manageable. That's not feeling like you should be down the gym like running a half a marathon or something. This is just like, what could I do that's tiny, that's going to not be too hard, but it's going to make me feel a little better. I mean, it's a bit like, gentle stretch or something, even just.
Yeah. Just like what I was doing. That's actually what I was doing this morning when I had this sort of idea. And I think that's when some energy comes in. Yeah, because that's when it happens, I think. And actually, I had stopped that practice, that sort of morning practice that I'd had before lockdown last year, or around that time. I stopped it for one reason or another because of everything. And it's not been easy to reinstate that. And I've beat myself up about it at times, and like been frustrated, and that again, that sort of pressure, I think, or the cultural story around resilience to bounce back, get back to normal, put your routines back in, like that. That it doesn't work for me, but I don't, and maybe it's because I know that all of that is actually more of a pressure and a stress thing, and I know now that's not good for my body to be.
You remember that time I phoned you, and I was in, I don't know when it was, years ago, and I was in a bad place, and I was so.
Which one? You've rung me with many times like that.
Yes, particular one I'm thinking.
Which one are you thinking of?
And I was just so frustrated. I was running to try and keep my fitness up. I was eating well. I was, going for walks. I was journaling.
Doing all the right things.
I was doing all the blooming self-care in the world. And I just said to you, it's not working. And I remember very clearly you said, well, maybe you just don't need any of that thing. Maybe you just need to sleep.
What good advice.
I know, and I just thought, I actually do. And that day I made a doctor's appointment, and I got signed off from work, and I ended up off work for 10 months.
Yeah.
And it was such a relief to let all of that go, because actually the truth of it was I just really did need
to stop.
I'd gone so far into red that none of those things were going to get me back.
No, and I think it is a really good lesson, and obviously it's not something everyone can do. And in Loving Difference, we are here to support people to find their ways to do that titration, that microdosing. Sarah calls it microdosing. I call it bite-sized beginnings. We've kind of all got our sort of ways of talking about it, but it is those. I know when I talk to clients about it, I often say when we're exhausted, it's sort of like, we don't know how to translate that into our mental and emotional well-being, the same as we do for our physical well-being. So physical well-being, we might say, like resilience, you've broken your leg. Yeah, let's go. Let's be doing a marathon next week. What that would be like the typical resilience thing, would it? Let's come on. And I think, where is we don't do that. It's like recovery, like you actually can't get up because you've got your leg in plaster. But what could you do, like small things, and there's rehab, and it is small steps, very small, and you just have to do them small. You can't go straight to there.
No, you can't.
And people I don't think realise that actually with your mental and emotional health it's the same. You can't do I'll go to a party, I will go away for the weekend, I'll read a really great book, and then beat ourselves up when we've put it down after 5 pages, or we've gone out for an hour and we feel absolutely exhausted, and it's because our system isn't able to handle that at the moment. And I think with the sort of everything that we've all experienced over the last year, where this then came in for me this morning, was this idea that nobody is talking about recovering from that, or what it's all about. Get back to normal, let's just do the usuals, rather than, well, how has that changed us, how are our systems, what are we needing to process or to
take our time over. Like, it just doesn't allow for it, does it? There's no language for that even, and that doesn't help when there's no language for it. You can't bring it in. And I think in Loving Difference, what we also bring is new and more language, so that people have something to hang this stuff on, so that they can see what they're missing. I know last autumn, when I was sort of I felt like I was drowning, literally. I mean, the image in my head was, I'm drowning still in these changes, not being able to do the things I need to do, and I just got totally overwhelmed and drowning in it all still, and the rules weren't changing, and nothing was getting any better. And I was thinking, God, I'm really not resilient. I thought I had tools for this. I thought I had a way to be in this when it's uncertain and all of that kind of thing. And yet I'm drowned. I just felt like I was drowning. And something just dropped into me that said, you've been here before. You have felt this way before. And that suddenly said to me, oh, that's what resilience is. It's remembering that I've been here
that is just perfect.
And it was like, and it wasn't this exact situation.
No.
I have been in this before. It was sort of 5 years before, when all of our neurodiversity stuff kicked off, and I just felt like I was in a cyclone, and I was drowning, and confused and frustrated, and I was suddenly like, oh, you have been here before, and you do have some tools, and you can create some time, and you can go slowly, one step at a time again. And suddenly everything just lifted a bit, and it wasn't like I suddenly had to be somewhere where I was doing it all of a sudden again, but I just felt like I could, the image then that came, rather than being drowning, was that I just heard a voice kind of say, put your feet on the bottom. You're not drowning. It's not as deep as you think. And I felt like inside of me, I could put my feet on the bottom of some sand. My whole body just went like, a bit like you're saying with the shoulders, like, and actually take a breath, and let's figure out the right next step, like one thing, and then we'll go. And that to me starts to feel like something healthier, where there is recovery and learning and room of some kind, rather than this rush back.
Yeah, it's interesting though that your felt self was telling you, your body was telling you that you've done this before, and that so you've recovered from it before, therefore you'd completed that stress cycle, and now you could actually learn from it and pull down some resources from it, and know that actually the way out of this is to go slow, to take some really baby steps, and to just think one day at a time. You had that resourcing from your experience before, and there was time in between there, and all that kind of thing, where things had been a bit better. And so exactly, I think that is resilience. That's when we've recovered, and then the next time we're hit by something, our bodies know what to do.
Yes, and not fear it, or
not when we're in the constant like crisis that go on for so long that we're well under our window and completely shut down or above and completely hyper. That's not resilience. That is a stress response that we're just keeping on going because we've got no choice.
Yeah, and I think that as we've coming back to it in this conversation, is that at the moment our culture rewards that. They're kind of that's the mainstream, that's the conventional. It's much harder to kind of go with the healthier response, rather than that reaction thing that just keeps going, to be able to, even inside of, I mean, it wasn't like life stopped for me last October, whatever, but it was inside of that, there was a permission almost of some kind internally to not follow the mainstream narrative. Maybe that's it. And maybe that's this week. I'm a bit frustrated because I'm just hearing again, back to normal, like, etc., and bounce back and all that, and actually thinking, I think there's a healthier narrative that we could have, and that's certainly what I think we strive to do in Loving Difference, is to have an alternative narrative, and support people in that narrative, because it's very tough to do that.
And we're really, people and we want people to feel the difference of doing more, you know, in that sort of self-care, and actually, as opposed to what I guess what we're trying to stress some of as well is doing less and calming your own nervous system down, so you're not wasting that energy and just throwing it away in endless thinking and stress responses, and to build a lot of awareness, because the problem is that most of the time we don't even realize we're in those defensive states, do we? And all the impact it's having on our communication and on our reactions to things that are going on around us, you know,
and our relationships.
I was so irritable, and you know that I realize now that irritability is a sign that I'm not coping. Whereas at the time, I just thought it was nobody was helping, everybody else's fault, and no, you know, it's no wonder I'm like this because everyone else is this, and yeah. And you go to the doctors, and the answer is that they'll offer you antidepressants, so that you can keep doing.
Yes, keeping doing. I think that's that sense of unhealthy resilience is keeping doing, and not stopping, and is survival.
And by the way,
resilience is you survived, whereas for me, healthy resilience is yes, stress. It's not like there's not going to be any obstacles or pain or things happen, but having better tools, more capacity to handle them, recover, have your system come back to a calm and connected. Calm's a superpower, in my opinion. Come back to that place, and then go again, and that, that is so much. Which is do less, slower, you know. And I think in the beginning, I could see no way at all of how I could create that. Like that, I needed support and sort of help and ways to be able.
Yeah, which is exactly what we try and do for others, because that's what we needed ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if people are listening and they're not quite sure which one they are, you know, I think, for me, I don't know if this helps, but if you're in that defensive doing, I think that feels very much like you on your own against the world.
Yes.
Whereas the other type of
where's everybody else?
they're kind of, you know, I think you feel more connected, or it's more like it's us in the situation, you know, whoever that may be for you. But I think if you're feeling it is just you against the whole world, you really probably are in a massive, you know, massively in your defense state. And and we'd really love you to reach out, because we've got some tools and some ways of slowing down, and we'd love to help.
So same word, resilience, but it could be two very different ways of being in it, experiencing it, how it gets rewarded, all sorts of things like that. Really interesting. Interesting. Thank you, Heather.
I could talk for hours. We probably should stop.
Good, we'll stop. Lovely to see everybody.
If this episode has resonated with you, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching to get notifications of future episodes. To dive deeper into all of this with professional coaching, resources, and all the support you need, join us in Loving Difference via www.lovingdifference.net. And we'll be back here soon.